of all the abuse that Bangalore city does to it by sending the wastewater of Bangalore, which is including industrial, domestic, and solid waste. Everything ends up in these two rivers. So we tried to study. So the slide that you see here is all the red things are implying the sampling locations that we took or that we considered for the study, the phase one. This river, Aarkavati, Kushbu, you may have to show it. Aarkavati River starts at Nandi Hills and comes down, and Hesarghatta Lake. That was the source of water supply for Bangalore in pre 1980s actually, and then downstream is the sampling point. Beneath that is, you can zoom in a little bit, Kushbu. That's the reservoir which was the water supply for Bangalore before we started looking at Kaveri. This was the point when TG Halli Reservoir, the flows into the reservoir reduced and the quality of the water deteriorated. They moved towards Kaveri, which is, like really downstream. Spatially you all understand where Kaveri is, or should I get into that? Does everybody know where Kaveri is with reference to Aarkavati?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm aware.
So, Aarkavati River, just for the benefits, Aarkavati River, TG Halli, Manchinabele Reservoir, which are built on the river, and then we come down. Rishabhavati River meets it somewhere upstream of the town called Kanakpura town. And further down, there is another dam called the Aarkavati Reservoir, which was built on Aarkavati. And further down, we have a place called Sangama, where it meets Kaveri River. So all this pollution that we are talking about is of extreme importance to Paani actually, as because we work for the entire river ecosystem, which involves the wildlife that is dependent on it. And this is the location where Kaveri Wildlife Sanctuary is located, where you have the endangered mushir, that is the habitat for that, the grizzly giant squirrel, many other endangered species that are endemic to this area. So this is the scope of the study, and the context with which Dr. Snehal was reached out was the TG Halli Reservoir. Do you want to zoom into that, Kushbu, the TG Halli Reservoir? Yeah, so the sampling point where we took sediments and samples upstream of the TG Halli, the contaminants in the sediments and water were quite alarming. So the reason why this becomes a special focus for us is the drinking water, the project to again reinitiate water supply to Bangalore from this reservoir is underway. The piping is done. What they did was they set up a 20 million liters per day sewage treatment plant just upstream of this point and downstream of this red sampling point, where they're going to pump 20 million liters from the river and treat it, then put it back into the reservoir, and water from Western Ghats. There's going to be a river that's diverted from the Western Ghats called the Netravati, which will be brought into TG Halli Reservoir, and both of this combined is going to be supplied after conventional water treatment to Bangalore city. That's the thing. So our question is, conventional water treatments can take, water treatment technologies can take care of regular contaminants like, fecal contamination or E. coli or bacterial, but what we are talking about are forever chemicals and which are in quite concerning concentrations. So how do we work with this? That's the context with which Nandakumar suggested that we meet Dr. Snehal, who may have some ideas about this. So Dr. Snehal, maybe you can start, sharing where you are at with your thing and any thoughts you have.
Yeah, first of all, Madhuri, I would like to know that you mentioned about the CSR, from which source you have got it, you said? What is that organization?
MGID Private Limited, which is Indian subsidiary of the Mavado watches, Mavado Group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and another question is,
Abhirami, you wanted to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, the voice is not completely audible. Some kind of
I think
disturbance.
Abhirami, the problem is our network. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sir. Yes.
So another question is, what was the objectives while you set in to do this study? Basically, what is the proposal all about? Because initially you said that you had started with some water quality monitoring, as well as you are also wanting to study about the sediments. So basically, I just want to know that what was your objectives in your proposal, or what you had set in to work for, so that let it be clear to me first.
Yeah, so can you see our screen, the
Yes,
screen?
yes.
Yeah. So we, see, there are like disjoint studies done by the government, like organizations like EMPRI, which is based in Bangalore, or the Central Bulk Pollution Control Board, KSPCB, independent things.
Yeah, I know
Does
about all that. Yeah.
There's no comprehensive, study of the presence of these forever chemicals,
Okay.
the persistent organic
Okay.
chemicals, study of these in a very comprehensive way. And we don't even know when the study was done. Sometimes it's done even during the rainy season, different times. So what we thought was, we will establish comprehensive primary data set of during the dry season, and because of budget limitations, we had to work with only 7 river points.
Yeah. So
So
I would, in fact, my first suggestion would be, if your group can completely read the EMPRI report, okay, of the 2016, because as per me, I have gone through that complete report, and I believe that it's very systematically things have been
yes,
outlined in that, okay, because whenever we do any kind of study of any river, it is very very essential to look at it as from the point of view of river basin or catchments, okay.
yes,
Now in this impri I found that it is very beautifully they have divided into 4 zones, and that
yeah,
4 zones have very well outlined that what are the issues in those areas.
yes,
And see, whenever we are trying to do any work in any pockets, many times it doesn't solve the purpose. And I know your noble purpose is very very good, that it's all about how the city can get good clean water. That's the most important thing which you are looking forward to, and providing data with will be useful to anybody and everybody. So that I can see, but then it's very very essential that we should be doing a complete mapping. Those zones have very well given what are the areas included in those zones, what are the issues, what are the limitations, and what are the jurisdictions, because
yeah.
it's all
That is,
about, yeah, because I also attended that Preeti Gehlot's meeting, where she's the special commissioner, and I found that she has gone through few things what I could understand. She's a very young lady, but when it comes to resolving the issues, immediately we cannot call for any kind of solution. See, today I will tell you, solution is only one: leave these rivers and water bodies on its own, and free the portions which has been encroached, because they are not left with the self revival areas like what we call it as the buffer zones and the riparian zones, flood plains, so these are, if we leave them, it will automatically give us the result. But in overall thing, I have found there is a lot of complications which are there. Mainly encroachments are most difficult, and it's since long time. I don't know when it is very well outlined about the jurisdictions why things have been not done timely. And at the same time, in the zone 2 I have seen that when the area like what is that the two places names I always forget, that Nahenavelli, near that, what is that? Uh, Gangenavelli and Goranavelli.
yeah, Gangenahalli.
So this is in the zone 2, but in
Yes.
these areas I find that there was there are earlier there was no, sorry, in the was it in the first zone or second? Let me
Yeah.
just get it
So
clear.
I think, one intervention that I want to do here is, so Dr. Snehal Nandakumar Abhirami, she's referring to actually the Tippagundanhalli notification that was done, where in 2003 ISRO did a study, and post that MPRI was asked to come up with a
I'm all
report.
aware of this.
No, I'm helping now the
Okay.
Nandakumar actually come on board. Not
Okay.
sorry, I was just setting the context.
Okay.
So the MP study is confined to this area, the preservation of the TG Halli catchment. Our study just wanted to set the context that we kind of tried to look at the entire basin and how the transport of sediments, we are able to see things even at this point downstream.
See, I'm coming to all that point.
Yeah.
See, you
Yeah.
cannot look at anything just at one particular place.
Yes.
Because whenever we do such a kind of a study, it has to be a complete mapping from the origin to the confluence. That's most important. And when I see about the Aarkavati is tributary the Kumadavati, and
Yes.
where it meets in the TG Halli then, okay,
Yes.
after Hasarghatta. So for me, first of all, one question was that when already Hasarghatta was unable to perform, then what was the reason to come up with another TG Halli? Isn't it? And because see, when you are talking about the sediment and sediment flow, that is the most important thing which we have to understand, that already these structures are the obstructions in the flow of the river, okay, and already the vicinity areas, that's what I was coming to, that in the zone 1, it is zone 1 means where it is the Aarkavati's subcatchment. Now there itself it is very clearly mentioned that earlier this area was having 123 villages, for which all the drainage system or drainage calculations or the supply and everything is calculated on the basis of 123 village by the BWSSB for the treatment purpose, okay. Whereas after that in 2007, that 110 villages which are added by BBMP, that has not been considered yet. Okay, now how are these issues going to be tackled? Because if we just want to focus on one particular area, I think you have talked about Vrishvati and Aarkavati, that isn't it? But when you talk about Aarkavati brings in all these things from its upstream. Okay, now if this is the situation, how are we going to, because one by one we have to talk about these issues also. Unless you talk about Aarkavati's upstream areas, these issues, as you just want to confine to a particular area, you will not be able to resolve it. Or I am not talking even about now solutions, but you cannot ignore these other aspects also. That's what I want to mention here. And there are several other issues like quarrying and soil mining, sand mining, all those things which is continuously going on, which has in fact affected, I will tell you that even I believe that the groundwater is also getting to a larger extent polluted by because of these kind of an excavation. Actually, where it is required the sediment to be removed for the increasing the carrying capacity, that is the flow of the river, that is not happening. But from the banks, these kind of excavations is going on and on. Okay, so and the quarrying which is happening, these are all adding to the lot of chemicals which is getting into the water body, just not from industries and sewage, but these are also the places from where it is getting more polluted. So did you think about all these things, or how did you begin with? Are you also considering social mapping and scientific diagnosis? Because when we do any kind of river study, or say in a particular area when we try to focus, we always try to do it with these two forms, that is social mapping also as well as the scientific diagnosis. What you are doing mostly, I call it as scientific diagnosis, but social mapping is most important, which is most of the things, as I said in IMPRI's report also I found. But then social mapping is mostly talking to the people in that vicinity area, because most of the time they have a lot of solutions with them, and they can only tell us from which time and what changes has happened and all. Because I believe even the Aarkavati's course has been changed, and because if the Aarkavati's course is changed, there is gradient change, and then the transport of the water and sediment is also affected. So there are several physical, chemical, biological, so much of things involved. So this kind of a study will always require a very, very systematic planning and a very systematic way of going ahead with it, where always, as we believe, there has to be 80% of the survey work, and then later comes in that along with chemical analysis, and then talking about the recommendations what can be done in that area. So I just want to know, because yesterday when Nandakumarji was talking, he said that your study has started only 1 month back, and I don't know what was the background study which was done before sailing into the directly the sediment test and the soil monitoring and all about the mapping. So I just want to know
So,
more.
I mean, the primary data generation, yes, you're right. We only came in, in the last quarter of, of last year, right, when CSR came in. But before that, our work involved doing a lot of surveys. We actually go on the ground and constantly observe the river at different locations. If I have to tell you what leads to that, contamination, right? We have a slide where we mapped all the pollution that's possibly coming, and causing, contributing to that kind of contaminant concentration there. I can bring up that slide actually. So what we are trying to say is that it's not something that we just jumped into without any thought process behind the
No, no,
whole
definitely you must
background.
have done.
Yeah,
Definitely you must have done.
yeah.
But
So
I just wanted to say the systematic way, the way I said
definitely.
just now, like complete mapping from the origin to the confluence, as you have shown in your map also, that what you are trying to show here. Because
Yeah.
ultimately I find that it is all about Kaveri ultimately getting all the pollutants there,
Yes.
and we are believing that now Kaveri is the like a savior for all of us, you know.
Yes. Yes.
And in the process, as I saw the TG Halli Hasargatta's condition was, what was the condition of that, then again, because see, yet state government or the central government has not put any gauge station, for the for mapping the flow of the river.
Yes.
So that itself is missing, and that's why
So
we are.
actually, the inflows of this reservoir should be measured by BWSSB, which they stopped doing when the TGLE reservoir started getting restored. They did a lot of desilting work a couple of years back, so we couldn't get any flow data from that time.
See,
Otherwise, there was
but the
supposed to
station
be.
has to be continuously there, because the flow will change every day, and during the day also it will be, maybe in the morning, afternoon, evening, the flow will be changing. So it cannot be once in a while, and they have to continuously. That is why these river gods are there, the stations are established, and that's why I'm surprised that the things which is needed, it's not there, and the things which was not needed or which was supposed to be stopped at time, like the encroachment, so much of big encroachments they are talking about today. It doesn't have, it did not happen suddenly, no, in one night or so. So what stopped from removing all these structures? And today, even if this lady who has come, and she cannot in one stroke, she cannot just relieve these places from the encroachments. And the way even I'm hearing in the river beds as well as in the lakes, the farmers even have encroached, and they are also doing different kinds of horticulture. And
Yes.
I have seen in many places where horticulture is being practiced, it's about so much of chemical fertilizers and all. The vegetables and all which we grow, they are not the native ones, and that's how so much of even influx of the chemicals, fertilizers.
Yes, yes. I think, as I hear, right, yes, it's a multi-pronged problem, but what
Yes.
we were trying to, one of the indicators that we were looking at, with this analysis was, and when we spoke to Dr. Indumati also, she kind of concurred with us saying this is indicative largely of industrial pollution, right? And there are other factors contributing to it, but as you can see, I mean, we if you go to any of these lakes, right, they
Yeah.
look like cesspools actually.
Yeah.
There are many water bodies inside here in the
I know there are
pools.
several tanks. Actually,
Yes,
if you
that's
go
it.
to the historical listing, no, you findings, you will find that everywhere there is cascading tanks, which ultimately fills these reservoir, and ultimately our rivers also flow. But those
Yes.
tanks itself has been encroached, they have disappeared, and large numbers have gone away. And if, I don't know, this Indumati who you are talking about, and if she says also that it's largely with the industrial waste, I will say that's not the fact. Today it's all mixed with the sewage and industries, as well as these chemical fertilizers,
Yeah,
because
I
of the
think
practices which is around the place.
yes. Yes, but I think, see, what we are trying to do is, I do understand that this large scale mapping, and I think this is where government will easily get away by saying that, we can't remove encroachments, it's a legal case, we can't do this. The 2003 TG Halli notification, our government failed to implement it. It was a political thing actually. So I don't know if we can rely on TGLE notification, which is good on paper, but nothing has been enforced on ground. But what we as Pani are thinking is that we have to go and address each tap that's there from, the pollution that's coming from Pina industrial area. We want to address it.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
want to
Madhuri,
clear
just
this legacy
yeah,
quarry waste, which is right next
yeah,
to the banks,
yeah,
which is ignored by the government.
yeah.
So I feel every one of these, when these
See, try and understand one thing what I'm trying to say.
yeah,
Instead of directly going into, you do that, what you are doing is very correct, you have to do that, because if we don't start also, then there is no beginning. Okay, but most important thing about any kind of a study is to first procure some information about the land use and land cover. Okay,
yes,
that's a very very essential thing. Okay, now when you get that, you will also find that there were so much of forest areas, because unless we have a holistic understanding of the situation, to when we are doing with any kind of analysis, also analysis will require all these kind of information. Okay, so land use land cover is very very essential thing which you should have in your hand, and a contour map and topography map. Okay, try
yes, we
to
do have.
procure, yeah, try to procure, but main is the land use land cover, because I see a lot of scope is there to work with the in the forest area, because it's the forest department's duty also to participate in this, and our law also says police department, forest department, everybody has to get along while we are trying to find the solutions. So while you will be doing the analysis of whatever the chemicals which you are identifying in large number or whatever it is, because see, not only land use land cover, even I have started talking to a lot of geologists. Okay, that's very very essential, geomorphology of the place, because basically if I talk about the TG Halli area and the area of our study, it is all of the metamorphic rocks, and lot of that soil texture and dikes also I have identified there. Okay, so these are also the essential factors which we have to keep it in mind while we are doing any kind of diagnosis. So for that purpose, I am saying that it's good that we are going ahead with the sediment test and water monitoring of a particular place. We have identified, because every site specific solutions we have to work on. It is that way only. Without that, there is no common solution for every place. So it has to be site specific, and for that reason only I'm saying that we have to do this way and get as much as information of what is. That's why social mapping, when I say 80 to 90%, is this only is giving us an idea. Like for an example, let me tell you, when BWSSB came along with us to that what is said, I said just now, Goravanhalli, that place, Goravanhalli place, there I could see there is a lot of livestock, cattle's rearing is going on, goat, piggery and all that in that area. But see, there is no waste management in place of such cattle sheds and these livestock. And that is why they have made pits, big big pits where they are collecting that waste. Ultimately it's percolating down, and during the rainy season or when it is filling, it is overflowing, then again it is impacting. So these are the small things which we need to identify in the pockets, which is adding to our this kind of, from the source of pollutions that we can always mention, and that's how then we have to get interventions in that manner. So interceptions will be only possible when we know at each specific places. Maybe it is 1 kilometer or maybe in some little distance only. Some things are there which we have to keep it in our mind. So that's what I'm trying to emphasize here, and that would be very very important.
Yes. I mean, we do take all of that into consideration.
Yeah.
I think the study was initiated because of all these observations that we had made over the years to look at all the drains here. If you actually travel here, you will find we have pictures of those, where you can see actually contaminants in the drains.
Yeah.
foaming water,
Yeah.
things dumped in the drain. So,
Yeah.
how do we show the impact of that to the government? That's why we brought the study in, where we have some data points about
Yeah.
the contaminants that are historical pollution.
Right.
That's why we went with sediments.
Right. And at the same time, I also see that the areas which has been confined for the companies to come up, in their vicinity again so many number of units have come up, companies, they are not at all in records. And then how they see any such units which comes up, it cannot come up without the consent of pollution control board, because without their NOCs these don't work. But I will tell you, there is a lot of challenges that these things happens in nexus. And that's why if you will be proving that these are the chemicals, then again the analysis, they will always demand for the pollution control board's analysis report. Their reports, you will find they are all manipulated. So from that point of view, I will suggest that whenever you are doing any kind of analysis, involve some government labs, NABL labs. That's the reason I always insist, because if you have to prove it to the government or even in the judiciary, it is always better that we contact some third party, and through that, like, it is kind of a verification. You can get a report from the pollution control board. At the same time, you have this lab report by which you are able to emphasize that what is going wrong and what needs to be done.
Okay. That may be a challenge considering the kind of chemicals we check, but we will look into that.
Yeah. What exactly you are looking forward from me? I was thinking this kind of a guidance which is required, and that's the reason I was trying to give you a holistic way how you can go ahead. Otherwise what happens, many a times when you sit before these authorities, they will go on with so many different kind of ways to escape from this talk, and then they will try to put it, no, it is not this, and you are only doing in this pocket, that pocket. So be always ready with your complete homework, so that they don't have any escape. At the same time, you are very strongly doing this work where stepwise manner you are able to go ahead. Otherwise, as we know, there are ample number of issues associated with the each site. You will not be able to justify, or your all efforts will also go void. So that's why I want that if you keep in your mind the systematic approach with which you have to go, in the vicinity, like if suppose from the areas where you are collecting water sample or the sediments, you try to find out what are the other how many wells or bore wells or ponds, lakes, what are there in the vicinity. That's why we call it as river basin approach. Like in that area, how much it is, catchment approach, watershed approach. In that manner, if we do, we are able to do in pockets. But before that, a bigger picture with a complete mapping of the place, so that we have a complete picture of the area, and then we are doing in the pockets. So that will help you a lot. Otherwise, these pictures, there are so many pictures we keep on collecting, and they are already there, and it's not that the authorities don't know about it. Everybody knows. It's just we are showing them the mirror and reflection, because ultimately these water bodies are the reflections of their ignorance. And see, many times we say their ignorance, it's also public ignorance. Public is also equally to be blamed. So that's why while we are doing this kind of a study, we have to continuously go on with the public awareness programs in those areas. Engage local public in that. Engage the local institutions, schools, even small schools, colleges, them, so that they are also engaged, and together a regular monitoring is required. See, we will not be in a position to do regularly these things, but you can take the scope of NEP 2020. In our nation today, there is a scope which is there in NEP, New Education Policy 2020, which says that community oriented research participation is made compulsory at every level. So community oriented research participation itself means a small surveys which they have to conduct, and with the help of that, solutions have to be arrived at. So it's like making them also responsible to adopt these small, because when we talk about the river, remember, it starts from the zero order streams to first order, second order, third order. Unless we are able to treat this first order or interventions in the first order, we will not be able to help the second order, third order, fourth order, like that. So this is the way we have to keep it in our mind, and that's why you have to procure these stream orders map also, by which
We have that actually.
yeah. So I think I had seen that. So with that help, that everywhere we have to engage the people, and that I think in isolation, if just we go on study with the parameters of knowing about the water monitoring and sedimentation, it will not work. It will not be worth. So we have to keep on engaging the local
I think
people
we are
also.
on the same page, Dr. Snail, because we are not looking at just this data. We were trying to bring in this data set is to strengthen our, argument about the state of affairs.
Yeah.
There's a polluted river stretch case that's going on in NGT where they have many things happening which the government shows, which doesn't change things on ground. So we are